The War of Wrath was over. For 30 years the host of Valinor had shattered the strongholds of Angband. For 30 years Ancalagon the Black had vomited flame across the sky. For 30 years elven blades and Valarin hammers had broken the hordes of orcs, balrogs, dragons, and every monster Melkor had spawned in his subterranean kingdom. And now silence had come. And in that silence, above the smoking ruins of the Iron Mountains, the lords of the West stood and looked upon what remained of the greatest of the Ainur. Manwë, Enwë, Tulkas, Orom, they were all present. Their hands, which had just shattered continents, now hung limp at their sides. No one spoke a word. Even Tulkas, whose laughter always broke the silence after battle, was silent. Because before them, bound in the chain Anganor, stood not merely a defeated enemy. Before them stood their brother, Melkor, the one who sang first in the great music, the one whose voice was more beautiful than all the voices of the Ainur, save perhaps the voice of Ilúvatar himself, the one who had seen the face of the Father before the Father hid it from all. And now he was broken. His crown, the 3 Silmarils, stolen from Feanor, had been torn from his head, his feet had been hewn off, his body, once capable of taking any form, had shrunk into the wretched shape he had worn when he first descended into Arda, a dark lord, vast and terrible, but broken at the knees. "We shall take him to judgment," Manwë spoke. His voice was steady, but those who knew the elder king heard a crack in it, a crack that had not been there before. "Let Mahanagzar decide his fate. Let the Valar deliver a sentence worthy of his crimes." And they led him away, through the ruins of Beleriand, sinking into the sea, through the smoking craters left by Ancalagon, through fields littered with the bones of elves and men who had fought and died for 6 centuries of the First Age. Melkor walked, bound, humiliated, but in his eyes there still burned that fire which neither the hammers of Owl, nor the winds of Manwë, nor Ilúvatar himself could extinguish. He was smiling. No one understood why. In 3 days there would be judgment in Mahanagzar, and the sentence was already decided: exile beyond the doors of night, into the void from which he had emerged before the beginning of time. But Melkor smiled, and no one could understand what he knew that they did not. Part 2. The One Who Did Not Come. Mahanagzar, the Ring of Doom, a circle of black stone carved by the thought of Ilúvatar himself, where the 14 Valar gathered only in those moments when the fate of Arda itself hung by a thread. This was such a moment. They all took their thrones, Manwë at the center, his eyes blazing with the blue of heaven, Varda at his right hand, her face impossible to look upon, for it radiated a light that outshone the light of Ilmen, Ulmo at his left, his form continuously flowing from water to mist and back again, Owl, Yavanna, Nienna, Mandos, Orom, Vana, Nessa, Tulkas, Irmo, Est, Vair, all 14. The circle was complete. Melkor was brought in. The chain Anganor clanked with every step, and the sound carried across all of Valinor, reaching even the timeless halls where the Father dwelt. Melkor stopped at the center of the circle. He raised his head and swept his gaze across the thrones of those he had once called brothers and sisters, and he laughed. "You laugh?" Mandos spoke. His voice was the grinding of tombstones. "You stand before the Ring of Doom, and you laugh." "I laugh," Melkor replied, "because you think you have won. You think you have brought the greatest threat to Arda before you. You think that after my exile peace will reign." He paused, and in that pause something shifted. The air in Mahanagzar grew colder. The light dimmed. Even Varda, for a moment, muted her radiance, as though she sensed something. something she had not felt since she kindled the first stars. "You are wrong," Melkor continued. "I am not the greatest threat to Arda. I am merely the second, and the one who was first." He looked directly at Manu, and in his eyes there was neither fear nor anger nor hatred, but only ancient, incomprehensible knowledge. "The one who was first is still here." Manu leaned forward. "Whom do you mean?" Melkor smiled. The very same smile he had worn for 3 days on the road through the ruins of Beleriand. "I mean the one who did not answer your call, the one who refused, the one who was here before we all arrived, before the lamps, before the first war, before the first star kindled in the sky. He was here, and he is still here." "You lie," Tulkas said, clenching his fists. "I have never lied," Melkor replied. "Distorted, exaggerated, omitted, but never lied. He is here. He waited. He watched me destroy the world and did not intervene. He watched you unite against me and did not join. He simply sat in his forest and sang songs. And you think this is harmless? You think that a power older than the music simply retired?" Manwë rose from his throne. "Name him," the Elder King demanded. "If you speak the truth, name him, and we shall summon him to judgment." Melkor laughed again, and this time his laughter was not cold. It was almost warm, almost nostalgic. "I will name him, but you will do the summoning yourselves." He drew a deep breath, his first in 3 days, and spoke. "Tom Bombadil." Part 3. The Summons. The name fell into the silence of Mahanaxar like a stone falling into still water. Ripples spread through the consciousness of each of the 14 Valar, and each of them felt the same strange, forgotten sensation. A sensation they had not experienced since Eru Ilúvatar first revealed to them the theme of the great music. Recognition. They knew this name, not from elven songs, not from the chronicles of Mandos. They knew it from the music itself, from the very first note, from the very first chord, when the theme was only beginning to unfold, and no one had yet begun to sing their part. In the deepest fabric of creation, in the very foundation of reality, there was something that answered to this name. Tom Bombadil. Vada spoke first. Her voice was quiet, and the light emanating from her face softened softer than it had been since she kindled the first stars above the awakening elves. "I remember him," Vada said. "He did not sing with us. When Ilúvatar gave us the theme, and we began to sing, and our voices merged into the great music, his voice was not among us. I remember because I was listening. I am always listening, and in the silence, in that silence which was before the first note and after the last, there was something, someone. He did not refuse to sing. He simply did not begin." Ulmo spoke second, and his voice was the murmur of surf against a shore that did not yet exist. "I remember him, when I filled the seas and rivers, when the first rain fell upon the bare earth, I felt him, in the drop, in the very first drop that fell upon the very first stone. He was there. Not inside the drop, not outside it. He was the drop, and he was the stone, and he was the space between them. Yavanna, giver of fruits, rose to her feet, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Tears that were not grief but something else, something for which no language of Arda has a name. My trees recognized him before I did. Every seed I planted, every sapling I nurtured, every leaf that unfurled beneath my gaze, they all knew him. They whispered his name, but I did not listen. I thought it was only the wind. I thought it was only the forest. But it was him. All this time, him. Melkor watched them. His smile widened. "You are only beginning to understand," he said. "Only beginning." Manwë raised his hand, and the winds of Valinor stilled. "We shall summon him, whoever he is, wherever he is. We shall summon him to Mahanaxar and ask him who he is." He closed his eyes and extended his thought across all of Arda, across mountains and seas, across forests and plains, across Middle-earth and Valinor, across everything that had been created and was yet to be created. He searched for the one who bore that name. He called to him. He commanded him to appear. And nothing happened. Manwë opened his eyes. He tried again, harder this time, pouring into the call all the authority Iluvatar had given him, all the power that made him the elder king of the world. He called, and the winds howled across Arda, and the oceans heaved, and the mountains trembled, and again nothing happened. "He is not coming," Varda said quietly. Melkor laughed aloud. "Of course he is not coming. You call to him as though he were your servant, as though he owed you obedience. But he owes no one, he never has. You are the king of the winds, Manwë, and he is the wind." Part 4. The One Who Came. Days passed. The judgment was postponed. The Valar conferred in Mahanaxar without pause, and Ulmo brought them tidings from the deeps of the ocean, and Orm from the thickets of the forests, and Varda from the starry heavens. None could find Tom Bombadil, or rather, all found him, but none could grasp him. In every raindrop he was, in every breath of wind he was, in every burrow where a badger slept, and every hollow where a squirrel hid he was. But when the Valar tried to focus, tried to seize him, tried to drag him to Mahanaxar, he slipped away, not resisting, simply absent. On the 37th day of fruitless searching, Nienna, Lady of Mercy, she who had wept since the marring of Arda, rose from her knees. "He will not come because we are calling him wrongly," she said. "We call him as judges, as prosecutors, as those who demand an answer. But he is not the accused, he is the witness. And a witness is not summoned, a witness is asked." Manwë looked at Nienna for a long time. Then he bowed his head. "How do we ask him?" Nienna wiped her tears. "Do not command. Do not demand. Do not summon. Simply tell him the truth. Tell him that we are afraid." Manwë closed his eyes, and for the third time he extended his thought across Arda. But this time there was no authority in his call, no command. Only truth, fear, doubt, the bewilderment of a being who had thought himself the greatest and had suddenly learned that he was second. And in that truth, in that vulnerability, in that crack which Manwë finally allowed himself to show, something answered. The wind shifted. The birds in the forests of Valinor sang differently. Yavanna's flowers turned their heads to the east. And on the eastern road leading to Mahanaxar, a figure appeared. A man? No, not a man. Men had not yet awakened in Middle-earth when he already walked the riverbanks. An elf? No, the first elf had not yet opened his eyes at Cuivinen, and he already knew how water smells after rain. A Maya? A Vala? An Ainu? No, no, and no. He belonged to none of these peoples, because he was before all peoples. He wore a blue coat, old and patched, and yellow boots, utterly absurd and utterly out of place among the marble columns and black stone. On his head was a hat tall, with a feather that looked as though it had been plucked from the tail of a random pheasant 1,000 years ago. He walked lightly, almost skipping, and whistled a tune that none of those present had ever heard. And when he entered the Ring of Doom, the 14 gods of Arda felt something they had never felt before. Goosebumps. "Greetings," Tom Bombadil said cheerfully. "You wanted to see me. I apologize for the delay. The water lilies are blooming on the river. One must not miss the blooming of the water lilies." Melkor stopped smiling. Part 5. The First Song. Manwë stared at Tom, and all the words he had prepared for 37 days vanished from his mind. Because looking at Tom up close was not the same as reaching for him with thought across all of Arda. Up close he was ordinary, staggeringly ordinary, frighteningly ordinary. His eyes were bright as a child's. His smile was warm as a stove on a winter evening. His presence was cozy as a cup of tea. And every intuition, every instinct, every particle of Manwu's being screamed, "This is the most dangerous creature you have ever met." "Who are you?" Manwu asked. The question came out almost plaintively, almost humanly. Tom Bombadil tilted his head to the side, like a bird examining a worm. "I am me," he replied. "Tom Bombadil, master of the wood, husband of Goldberry, friend to badgers and lilies and little nameless rivers. And you are Manwu, Lord of the Winds, and you wish to ask something else. You wish to ask why I did not sing." Manwu flinched. "How do you know that?" Tom smiled, and in that smile was something that made Varda shield her eyes and almost step backward. "I know everything that happens in my forest," Tom said. "And my forest, Manwa, Slimo," he gestured around the Ring of Doom, and the sky of Valinor, and the stars of Varda, and the mountains of the Pelori, and everything beyond them. "My forest is a little larger than you think. You wish to know why I did not sing the great music," he continued. "I will tell you. I did not sing because I was not made to sing. I was made to listen. When Ilvatar revealed the theme to you, when you all opened your mouths and sang, I stood beside the Father and listened. Not to your singing, to his silence." A pause fell so deep that even Mandos stopped recording the fates. "The Father has a silence," Tom said. "It is older than his words. It is older than his thoughts. It is older than he himself, if the word older has any meaning when speaking of the everlasting. From this silence the music was born. From this silence you were born. From this silence Arda was born. And in this silence I dwell." The Valar were silent. None of them, had ever heard anything like this, because none of them had ever thought about the silence of the Father. They had thought about his words, about his theme, about his commands. But about what lay between the words, about the stillness in which the Father simply existed, simply was, simply breathed, if it is fitting to speak of the breath of the everlasting, about this they had never thought. "Tom Bombadil is the silence," Manwu spoke. His voice trembled. "No," Tom replied. "Tom Bombadil is what lives in the silence. I am not the stillness. I am the one who listens to the stillness. I am the first ear the Father made, so that someone could hear how beautiful is the world he conceived." Part 6. The Name. Melkor could no longer remain silent. All this time he had stood in chains and listened, and every word of Tom's struck him like the hammer of Owl. "You," Melkor rasped, "you. I knew you existed. I felt you. In every note of the music that I twisted, in every mountain I shattered, in every life I marred. I felt that there was someone watching, waiting, not intervening, and I hated you for it, more than Manwu, more than Varda, more than Ilvatar himself, because they at least tried to stop me. You just watched." Tom turned to Melkor, and for the first time since he entered Mahanaxar, his face changed. It did not become angry. It did not become menacing. It simply became old, unimaginably, inconceivably old. So old that even the Valar seemed like children playing in a sandbox. "You want to know why I did not stop you," Tom said. His voice was soft, but each syllable fell like a drop of molten metal. "I did not stop you because you are part of the song. Your darkness, your rage, your pride, all of it is part of the song. And without your darkness, the light of Varda would not be so beautiful. Without your destruction, the creation of Owl would not be so precious. Without your hatred, the love of Nienna would not be so deep. He took a step toward Melkor. The chains of Angainor rang. You think you are a mistake, Melkor. You think you are a dissonance in the music. But the Father does not make dissonances, he makes contrasts. And you are the deepest contrast he ever created. You are the shadow that makes the light visible. Melkor stepped backward. He who feared nothing, not the Valar, not Ilúvatar, not the void itself, stepped backward from Tom Bombadil. And now, Tom said, I shall sing. Part 7. The Song. He opened his mouth and sang. It was not a song in the language of the Valar, not a song in the language of the elves. The elves had not yet invented their languages. Not a song in the language of men. Men still slept by the lake of Hildrian. It was a song without words, without notes, without melody in the sense that mortals and immortals understand melody. It was the sound that existed before sound was invented, and Mahanagsar vanished. Not physically, the stone remained in place, and the thrones remained in place, and the Valar remained on their thrones, but all of them, all 14, and Melkor in chains, and Enwu at the entrance, and even Ilúvatar in the timeless halls, saw the same thing. They saw the moment when there was nothing, nothing at all. No space, no time, no matter, no thought, only the Father and his silence. And in that silence, at its very core, something breathed, something waited. Something that was not the Father, but was closer to the Father than any of the Ainur. Tom Bombadil, the first creation, not a Maya, not a Vala, not an Ainu. Simply the first. Created before the Father decided there would be Ainur. Created as an experiment, a draft, a trial stroke and then forgotten? No, not forgotten. Left. Left to be what it was, the witness, the keeper, the one who remembers. And when the music began, and the Ainur sang, and Arda emerged from their voices, the first creation did not join. It simply walked into the created world, as one walks into a house built by someone else. It settled in a forest, by a river, in the quietest and most beautiful place it could find, and stayed there, to watch, to listen, to remember. The song ended. Mahanagsar returned. The Valar sat on their thrones, shaken, silent, and tears streamed down the faces of gods. Not from grief, not from joy, but from the touch of something that was greater than all of them. And Melkor, who had smiled for 3 days, savoring how he would reveal a secret that would destroy the Valar. Melkor fell to his knees. He did not bow, he fell. His legs buckled, and the chains of Angainor clattered, and the King of Darkness, the Lord of Angband, screamed. He screamed a name, not the name of Tom Bombadil, but another name, a name he had not spoken since the first star kindled above Arda, since he first peered into the abyss and saw there something that made him seek the flame of Ilúvatar. A name that was older than the music. None of the Valar could make it out, none save Melkor himself, but all of them understood what it meant. Melkor, greatest of the Ainur, the one who thought he was first and mightiest, had just learned that he was never first, and never the mightiest. He was third, after the Father, after the one who listens. And Tom Bombadil, hearing that name for the first time in 1 billion years, simply nodded and said, I remember. Part 8. The Sentence. Mandos pronounced the sentence. Melkor, Morgoth, as Feanor had named him, the black enemy of the world, was cast out beyond the doors of night, into the void, into that very nothingness from which he had come, and to which he had always feared to return. But before they led him away, Melkor raised his head and looked at Tom. You could have stopped me, he said, at any moment. You could have stopped all of it, the fall of the lamps, the destruction of the trees, the war, the death, Everything. You could have stopped it. Tom met his gaze. Yes, he said simply. I could have. Then why? Melkor rasped. Why did you not? Tom leaned toward him, leaned so close that their faces almost touched. Because I am not your judge, Tom said, and not your jailer, and not your executioner. I am your audience, and I have watched. All these centuries, all these ages, all these billions of years, I have watched. I watched you destroy, and I remembered every stone you overturned, every life you broke, every note of the music you twisted. I remembered everything, because someone must remember. Someone must be the witness to what happened here. He straightened, and when Arda ends, and the second music begins, and the father asks me what I saw, I will tell him. I will tell him everything, about you, Melkor, about Manwë, about Vardar, about the elves who died for the light, about the men who died for hope, about every leaf that unfurled and every leaf that fell. I will tell him everything, and then the Father will understand. Everything he created, everything that became of his creation, all the beauty, all the horror, all the love, all the hatred, everything. Tom smiled. That is why I exist, Melkor. That is why I did not intervene. Because my work is not here. My work is there, at the throne. Melkor said nothing. He simply stared. Stared and stared until the guards dragged him beyond the doors of night. And when the doors closed and the void swallowed him, the last thing he saw was the eyes of Tom Bombadil. Old, infinitely old, and infinitely kind. The eyes of one who had seen everything and had not turned away. Part 9. The Return. Tom Bombadil left Mahanaxar as he had come, on foot, whistling, in his yellow boots. No one tried to stop him. No one tried to speak to him. The 14 gods of Arda simply stood and watched him go, a small figure in a blue coat, vanishing on the eastern road. Man remained silent for a long time. Then he turned to Vardar. We will never be the same. No, she replied, we will not. And they were not. From that day the Valar changed subtly but irreversibly. They became quieter, humbled, softer. Man gave fewer commands. Vardar kindled new stars with a pensive tenderness that had not been in her before. Owl, working in his forge, sometimes stopped and listened to something no one else could hear. And all of them, all 14, from time to time cast a glance to the east. To where, beyond the mountains and the seas, in an old forest by a little river, lived the one who was first. Part 10. The River Flows. And in the old forest by the Withywindle River, nothing changed. Tom came home, kissed Goldberry, picked up his lily basket, and walked along the bank as though nothing had happened. And in a sense, nothing had. For Tom there were no great and small events. The war of wrath and the blooming of a lily were to him phenomena of the same order, because both were part of the song. Both were worthy of being seen and remembered. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Tom sat on the bank of the Withywindle, his feet dangling in the water, and gazed to the west. He did not think of the Valar, did not think of Melkor, did not think of the music that had been and the music that would be. He simply listened. Listened to the river flowing, to the leaves rustling, to the badger stirring in his burrow. And somewhere there in the west, beyond the seas and the mountains, in the deepest prison beyond the doors of night, Melkor Morgoth, the black enemy of the world, lay in the void. And he too was listening to the silence, that very silence Tom had spoken of. The silence of the Father, the silence that was older than everything. And in that silence, for the first time in all the ages of his existence, Melkor felt neither rage, nor pride, nor hatred. He felt peace. And somewhere in the deepest depth of the void, where the light of Vardar did not reach, where the winds of Manwë did not blow, where even the authority of Iluvatar himself could not extend, Melkor smiled. Not an evil smile, not a triumphant smile, but the smile of one who had finally understood the joke, a joke he had been told from the very beginning, but which he could not hear until he stopped speaking. Tom Bombadil was the first, and he simply watched, and that was enough.